Driving deep into the night, I pulled up to the last delivery location, a house hidden away from the town's usual hustle. There's something about delivering to a place so remote it sits past a cemetery on a dead-end street, something not quite right. As I parked my car in front of the old, decrepit house, a chill ran through me. The house was in total darkness, no welcoming lights, no signs of anyone waiting for a late-night snack. It stood there, looking abandoned, the kind of house that stories warn you to stay away from. I glanced at my phone one last time, hoping for a bar of service, but there was nothing. Completely cut off from the world, I was alone with just the pizza and the eerie silence of the night. I took a deep breath, grabbed the pizza, and stepped out of the car. The air was unnaturally cold for a summer night, biting at my skin as I walked up to the dark house. My steps on the wooden porch echoed ominously, breaking the heavy silence that hung over the place. I reached the door, my heart pounding in my chest, and knocked, hoping that maybe I'd got the wrong house despite the GPS confirming this was the place. Stay tuned as I step into a scene straight out of a nightmare, where every shadow and every sound could mean something lurking in the dark. After a few tense moments of waiting, the silence was pierced by the sound of footsteps inside the house. They were slow and heavy, dragging across the floor as if the person they belonged to found even the simplest movement a struggle. As the steps approached the door, my pulse quickened, and a million thoughts raced through my mind about who or what might be on the other side. "Hello? Pizza delivery," I repeated, my voice betraying a hint of my nervousness. The footsteps halted right behind the door, and the air seemed to grow colder around me. The door creaked open slowly, just a sliver, and that's when I saw it, a hand, pale and bony, creeping out from the darkness. It was unsettling to look at, with skin so translucent it seemed almost ghostly. The hand trembled as it held out the exact change for the pizza. I stood frozen, staring at the hand, the eerie quiet of the night enveloping us. It was one of those moments where everything feels surreal, where you start to question whether you're part of a scene from a horror movie. As the reality of the situation sank in, a whisper floated out from the shadows behind the door, pleading, "Please, don't leave me here." That voice, soft and filled with desperation, tugged at my conscience. Here I was, ready to bolt at the first sign of danger, yet someone was inside, possibly in need of help. But was it a trap? My instinct screamed at me to run, but the human part of me hesitated, caught between fear and the urge to assist. What would you do? Stick around to find out what decision I made in this chilling delivery nightmare. Faced with a decision, I paused, my hand hovering over the money, the frail voice echoing in my mind. "Are you okay?" I managed to ask, peering into the crack of the door, trying to catch a glimpse of whoever was inside. The only response was the hand, still outstretched with the change, not moving, as if frozen in time. Then, louder than before, the voice came again, filled with fear. "Please, help me. Don't leave." The plea was so full of terror that it rooted me to the spot. My heart told me to help, but my head screamed danger. This wasn't just about delivering a pizza anymore, it was about whether to intervene in a situation that felt increasingly out of my depth. Just as I was gathering the courage to respond, the hand withdrew, pulling back into the darkness of the house, and the door began to close. "Wait," I shouted, my voice cutting through the night air. I stepped forward, compelled by a mix of fear and resolve. But it was too late. The door slammed shut, and I was left standing on the porch, alone with the chilling silence. The night's cold seemed to deepen, and the shadows around me grew darker. I knew I had to make a choice: fast stay and investigate further, or get back to the safety of my car. What would you have done? Stay tuned as this story takes an even darker turn. With the door now shut and my heart racing, I didn't hesitate any longer. I dropped the pizza box right there on the porch, turned, and sprinted back to my car. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to get out of there, to escape this nightmare. As I fumbled with my keys, the silence of the night felt oppressive, as if it was watching me, ready to swallow me whole. I threw myself into the car and slammed the door shut, locking it immediately. I didn't even buckle up before I started the engine and floored the accelerator, eager to put as much distance as possible between myself and that eerie, forsaken house. As I drove away, the trees that earlier seemed to form a tunnel now appeared like sinister figures, reaching out to snatch me back into the darkness. The drive back to the pizza shop was a blur of adrenaline and fear. My mind replayed the events over and over, each time asking myself if there was something more I could have done. But deep down, I knew I had barely escaped a potentially dangerous situation. Was it really just about a pizza delivery, or had I stumbled upon something much darker? Keep watching to find out how this haunting experience ended when I returned to the safety of familiar lights and faces. Once back at the pizza shop, the neon lights felt like a sanctuary after the darkness I had escaped. I burst through the door, my breath uneven and my hands shaking. The manager was still there, counting the night's earnings. I blurted out my story, words tumbling out in a panic, describing the abandoned house, the ghostly hand, and the desperate voice begging me not to leave. He listened with a skeptical eyebrow raised, then turned to his computer to pull up the address. After a few clicks, he frowned and shook his head. "That's weird," he muttered. "We don't have anyone listed there. Are you sure you got the right place?" Doubt clouded his features as he stared at the screen, showing that the address didn't even exist in our delivery zone. This revelation sent another chill through me. What had I stumbled upon? Was it a mistake, or something more sinister? The unanswered questions loomed large as I decided right then I was done. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me, nor could I dismiss the voice that still whispered in the back of my mind, haunting my thoughts. Join me next time to find out how I coped with the aftermath of that night and why I eventually decided to quit a job I once needed so desperately. Quitting my job as a pizza delivery driver was a tough decision, but after that night, it felt like the only choice I could make. The memories of the encounter haunted me, especially the voice that pleaded for help. It was a constant reminder that something out there had reached out, and I had left it behind. Lying in bed at night, the darkness seemed fuller, as if echoing the void I'd felt at that house. The voice would sometimes whisper in my sleep, a soft murmur in the quiet, saying, "Don't leave me here." It was both a plea and a reproach, a thread tying me back to that mysterious, terrifying place. Deciding to move on from the job was not just about leaving a place of employment. It was about trying to escape the grip of a nightmare that didn't want to let go. Each night as I tried to sleep, the decision weighed on me. Was there more I could have done? Should I have tried harder to help? Tune in next time for more insights into how I dealt with these haunting questions and what steps I took to find peace after such a chilling experience. After leaving the pizza delivery job, I spent a lot of time reflecting on that night. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that ignoring that voice wasn't something I could easily forget or forgive myself for. It nagged at me, a reminder of a moment when fear had overridden my other instincts. To cope with the lingering effects of the experience, I started talking to friends and a counselor about the incident. Discussing it helped me process not just the fear, but also the guilt and the unresolved curiosity about what really happened at that house. These conversations were steps towards healing, allowing me to slowly detach from the anxiety and the shadows that night had cast over my life. Finding peace meant acknowledging that while I could not change the past, I could learn from it. I embraced the lesson to always listen to my instincts, but also to consider how I can safely help others in need. Join me next time as I share more about how these experiences have reshaped my approach to unexpected and mysterious situations, and how I've grown from them. In the aftermath of that unsettling experience, my approach to dealing with unexpected situations changed significantly. I became more cautious, always aware of my surroundings and the potential risks. At the same time, I developed a stronger resolve to not let fear dictate my actions entirely. This balance between caution and courage was a hard-earned outcome of my ordeal. As I moved forward, I also found a new appreciation for the routine and the mundane, understanding how quickly things can shift into the unknown. I made it a point to learn more about personal safety and how to assess risks better, equipping myself with knowledge and tools that could prevent or help manage future incidents. Join me next time to hear about how these changes have influenced my daily life and decision making, helping me to navigate the world with a renewed sense of confidence and responsibility. Despite the unsettling sight, I had a job to do. Pulling up the driveway, every instinct was on high alert. The man hadn't moved an inch since I first spotted him, his smile fixed, his eyes locked on me as I stepped out of the car. The eerie silence of the area magnified every sound, from the crunch of gravel under my feet to the soft hum of the car engine idling. Hey, got your order here, I called out, trying to sound casual and professional despite the tightening in my chest. The man's smile didn't waver, nor did he make any move to respond. His silence was as loud as a shout, hanging in the air between us, thick with tension. Holding the pizza with slightly trembling hands, I approached cautiously, the distance closing with each reluctant step. I reminded myself that it was just another delivery, but the chill that ran through me said otherwise. What was it about this night that felt so different, so wrong? Keep watching to find out how this late-night delivery turned into a chilling encounter that I'd never forget. As I reached the man, his unsettling smile remained unchanged. "It's 22.50, I said, extending the pizza towards him. Without a word, he reached into his pocket, slowly pulling out coins to pay. Each coin was meticulously counted and presented an unnaturally prolonged process that had me shifting uncomfortably on my feet. The silence was broken only by the clink of coins, and each sound seemed to echo in the still night air. His hands were unsettlingly cold when they brushed against mine as he handed over the money. His touch sent an involuntary shiver through me. His eyes never left mine, that smile never faltering, not even for a second. It was as if he was enjoying the moment, prolonging it deliberately. This encounter was growing weirder by the second. His next words were even more disturbing. "You drive fast, don't you?" How he knew anything about my driving was beyond me. This comment added an extra layer of creepiness to the situation, suggesting he had been observing me long before tonight. Stay tuned as the night takes a darker turn, revealing whether this peculiar interaction was merely awkward or a precursor to something more sinister lurking in the shadows. Feeling increasingly uneasy, I quickly wrapped up the transaction, eager to leave. The air seemed to grow colder around us, and the sparse streetlights did little to dispel the darkness that enveloped the driveway. Every instinct told me to get out of there, to end this bizarre delivery as fast as possible. "I need to get going," I muttered, backing away towards my car. The man's smile seemed to widen slightly, as if he sensed my fear. His gaze followed me intently, making each step feel heavier than the last. I turned and hurried to my car, throwing a glance over my shoulder to see if he was following. As I climbed into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut, the relief of being back in my own space was palpable. I started the engine, the familiar sound offering a small comfort against the night's strangeness. As I drove off, I couldn't shake the feeling that the man's eyes were still on me, that his smile was still directed at my retreating car. Keep watching to see how this eerie night unfolds further, as the distance I put between us might not be enough to escape the reach of that haunting smile. As I accelerated away from the house, the unsettling feeling clung to me, persistent as the shadows that stretched long under the streetlights. Glancing in the rearview mirror, my breath hitched. There he was, still standing at the end of the driveway, his figure barely discernible in the dim light, yet unmistakably still watching. The smile that had seemed merely odd before now took on a menacing quality in the solitude of the night. As I navigated the turns back towards the town, I tried to shake off the dread that had settled over me. But then, a sudden glimpse in the mirror again, a shape in the distance. It couldn't be, but it looked like the same man, walking along the road far behind me. Was it possible? Was he following me? The thought was absurd, but the fear was real, gripping me tighter with every mile I put between us. As I merged onto the main road, the sense of being followed finally began to fade, replaced by an urgent need to return to familiar surroundings. Tune in as I recount the chilling realization that unfolded upon reaching the safety of the pizza shop and the unexpected continuation of that night's horrors. Pulling into the pizza shop's parking lot, the quiet and darkness of the industrial district felt isolating. The comforting glow of the shop's lights was off, everyone else had gone home. As I parked near the entrance, still rattled, I tried to collect my thoughts, taking deep breaths to calm my racing heart. Then, my phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar sensation in the heavy silence of the night. I picked it up, expecting perhaps a notification from my manager about the next shift. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. Drive safe. The message was simple, but under the circumstances, it sent a wave of cold dread washing over me. I looked up from my phone, scanning the dimly lit parking lot, and there he was. At the edge of the light's reach, the same man from the delivery, his smile as haunting as before. How had he gotten here so quickly? Was he really the same person, or was my mind playing tricks on me? This realization that he had somehow followed me or anticipated my route turned the night's eerie encounter into a tangible threat. Watch what happens next as I face this unnerving predicament, questioning whether to confront the mystery or flee from the growing danger. With no time to waste, I threw the car into reverse, my instincts now in full control. The figure at the edge of the parking lot did not move, just stood there watching as I backed out hastily. His unblinking stare and that unwavering smile sent a final surge of fear through me, compelling me to leave as quickly as possible. I sped out of the parking lot, not daring to look back until I was several blocks away. Once I felt a sufficient distance had been put between us, I allowed myself a moment to think. The whole situation was overwhelming, the reality of the threat now undeniable. It was no longer just a creepy interaction at a delivery, it was a pursuit. Determined not to return to the shop or to that part of town anytime soon, I headed straight home. The drive was tense, every shadow and every movement in my peripheral vision a cause for alarm. Join me next time to discover how I coped with the aftermath of this terrifying encounter and the measures I took to ensure my safety in the days that followed. Once home, the safety of familiar surroundings did little to ease my mind. The night's events replayed in my head, each detail sharper due to the adrenaline that still hadn't fully dissipated. I locked all the doors, checked all the windows, and sat down in the quiet of my living room, trying to process everything. The man's persistence in following me, the calculated appearances, and that final text message, it all suggested a level of planning that was deeply unsettling. I knew I had to take action. The next morning, I contacted the police, explaining the situation and providing them with the details of the mysterious man and his unsettling behavior. I also reached out to my manager to explain why I wouldn't be returning to the shop, at least not until I felt safe again. The experience had shaken my sense of security, and I realized that ensuring my safety might require changes to my routine and possibly even my job. Stay tuned as I share the steps I took to reclaim my peace of mind and the lessons I learned about personal safety and the importance of trusting one's instincts in the face of danger. In the days that followed, I focused on enhancing my personal security. I installed better locks on my doors and got a security system for my apartment. Every step I took was about creating layers of safety around myself. Additionally, I spoke with my neighbors about being vigilant and keeping an eye out for any strangers in the area. The police took my concerns seriously and started patrolling the area more frequently. They also looked into the number that had sent the eerie text message, though it was registered under a name that led nowhere. It was a small comfort to know the authorities were on alert, but the shadow of that night lingered. As I navigated through the aftermath, I also realized the importance of being more aware of my surroundings, not just at work, but everywhere. The ordeal became a catalyst for change in my life, pushing me towards a more cautious and prepared mindset. Join me next time as I delve deeper into how these events reshaped my approach to personal safety and how I found strength in a community that stood together against unseen threats. Navigating the last stretch of road, I pulled into the apartment complex's cracked and weed-riddled parking area. The lack of any signs of life, from parked cars to the usual hum of evening activities, added a chill to the already cold night air. The silence here was different, heavy with the weight of abandonment and neglect. Hesitantly, I killed the engine and sat for a moment, peering up at the darkened windows. Each one seemed to stare back, hollow and soulless. The order receipt in my hand listed a delivery to apartment 3B, but without any lights, the task felt more daunting than usual. With a deep breath, I grabbed the pizza, locked the car, and approached the main entrance. The door, surprisingly, wasn't locked, swinging open with a creak that echoed down the empty hallway. The air inside was stale, the kind of stale that told you the place hadn't been properly aired out for a long time. Join me as I step inside this desolate building, where the atmosphere grows thicker with each step, pulling me further into a scenario that no delivery driver ever wants to encounter. Once inside, I found a note taped to the inside of the front door. Deliver to the basement door. This was unusual and unsettling. Basements weren't typical delivery spots, especially not in seemingly abandoned buildings. The handwritten scrawl on the note did nothing to reassure me. If anything, it heightened my anxiety. I paused to consider my options. Leaving the pizza at the main entrance crossed my mind, but failing to complete a delivery wasn't in my nature, even in such bizarre circumstances. Resigning myself to follow through, I ventured deeper into the building. The lobby was dimly lit by a single flickering light bulb, casting eerie shadows that seemed to shift as I moved. The smell of dampness filled the air, the kind of mustiness that clings to buildings long left to decay. I spotted the door marked basement at the end of a narrow hallway, its paint chipped and handle worn from age. Join me as I descend into the basement, each step echoing ominously in the empty building, drawing me closer to an encounter that promised to be anything but ordinary. Grasping the cold metal handle of the basement door, I pushed it open, the hinges groaning under the strain. The staircase before me descended into near darkness, the only light coming from another weak bulb at the foot of the stairs. Each step down felt heavier than the last, the air growing cooler and the faint hum of an unknown source rising to meet me. "Hello? Pizza delivery," I called out, hoping to hear a response that might ease the tension building within me. But the only reply was the echo of my own voice bouncing back, distorted and hollow. Reaching the bottom, I found myself in a long, narrow hallway, lined with closed doors on either side, each appearing more forbidding than the last. One door at the far end was slightly ajar, a sliver of light escaping into the hallway. The murmuring voices I'd heard from above seemed to emanate from behind it, a low, indistinct chatter that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Press on with me as I approached the source of those voices, each step filled with dread, pulling me deeper into the heart of the basement's chilling secrets. As I edged closer to the ajar door, the murmuring grew louder, yet no words were discernible, just a continuous, eerie drone that seemed unnatural. With a deep breath, I nudged the door open further, allowing more light to spill into the dim hallway. The room beyond was starkly lit by a single lamp on a small table, casting long shadows across the bare concrete walls. Inside, a group of people sat in a circle, their backs to me. None of them moved or acknowledged my presence as I announced, "Pizza delivery." Their stillness was unnerving, as if they were statues rather than living beings. The atmosphere in the room felt thick, charged with an energy that was both curious and unsettling. Hesitantly, I stepped into the room, the light from the hallway behind me seeming to shrink away. "Hello," I ventured again, a bit louder this time. Slowly, one of them turned their head. The face that looked back at me was pale, eyes wide and unblinking, expression utterly blank. Stay with me as I confront the reality of this bizarre gathering, the tension mounting with each silent, emotionless stare that meets mine. The silence was broken only by the soft shuffling as each person in the circle slowly turned to face me. Their movements were stiff, as if unused to motion. Each face mirrored the first, pale, expressionless, and disturbingly blank. The air felt thick, making it hard to breathe as I clutched the pizza box tighter to my chest. "Who ordered this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, almost drowned out by the palpable tension in the room. No one answered. They just stared, their gazes empty yet somehow filled with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The stillness of the room was suffocating, and a chill ran down my spine, urging me to leave. But before I could turn to exit, the first person who had turned stood up abruptly. Their movements were robotic, and as they did, the others rose in unison, mimicking the motion with eerie precision. They began to advance toward me slowly, their faces still devoid of any emotion, their eyes fixed on me. Join me as I make a desperate decision in this chilling moment, the instinct to flee taking over as the group moves closer with each slow, deliberate step. Panic set in as they edged closer, their approach methodical and unnerving. I dropped the pizza box, the sound echoing loudly in the cramped space, and turned to run. The hallway that had brought me to this room now seemed impossibly long as I sprinted back towards the stairs. The echo of their footsteps filled the corridor, a soft but relentless sound that fueled my urgency. The flickering light above barely kept the darkness at bay as I dashed towards the staircase, my heart pounding in my ears. Reaching the stairs, I took them two at a time, not daring to look back, the fear of what might be behind me spurring me on. At the top, I slammed the door shut, the sound a sharp crack in the quiet of the empty building. Follow me as I make my escape from the basement, the terror of the encounter propelling me back to the safety of my car, desperate to leave this nightmare behind. Once through the door, I didn't stop to catch my breath. I sprinted across the lobby, my footsteps loud against the old, creaking floorboards. The main entrance, which had welcomed me in so innocuously earlier, now felt like a barrier to my freedom. Bursting out into the night air, I raced to my car, fumbling with the keys in a frantic rush to unlock it. The cool outside air did little to calm my nerves, each sound in the quiet night sounding like a pursuit. I jumped into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and started the engine, not even allowing myself a moment to think. I drove away from the apartment complex as fast as I could, the buildings fading into the background along with the horrifying experience. The drive home was tense, my mind replaying the events over and over, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Stay with me as I reflect on the night's terrors, contemplating the implications of what I'd seen and the impact it would have on my future decisions about safety and trust. Upon arriving home, the safety of my own space was a stark contrast to the horror I had just escaped. I double-checked every lock and sat down, trying to process the surreal and terrifying events. The images of the emotionless faces and their synchronized movements haunted me, lingering in my mind as a vivid, unsettling memory. Determined to never experience anything like that again, I made the decision right then. I was done with late-night deliveries. The risk was no longer worth the paycheck. The next day, I called my manager to explain why I wouldn't be returning, careful to detail the evening's events without sounding unhinged. Reflect with me on the aftermath and the lessons learned from that frightful night, and how I approached my next steps to ensure personal safety and peace of mind in my working life. In the days that followed, I took serious steps to recover from the ordeal and reassess my career choices. I began looking for daytime job opportunities, hoping to avoid the vulnerabilities that come with working late at night. My conversations with family and friends about the incident helped me to slowly piece together my shaken confidence and regain a sense of normalcy. I also reached out to a counselor to discuss the anxiety and fear that lingered, understanding that talking through the experience was crucial for mental recovery. Each step forward in discussing it helped to diminish the power that the memory held over me. As I share this final part of the story, I'll delve into how these decisions shaped my path forward, highlighting the importance of listening to one's instincts and the profound impact of seeking support in times of distress. Join me as I close this chapter, looking towards a safer and more secure future. Moving forward from that night, I embraced the changes with a newfound determination to ensure my well-being was never compromised again. I started a new job with daytime hours, which not only provided a safer working environment, but also allowed me more time to spend with loved ones, rejuvenating my spirits and mental health. I strengthened my social connections, which proved invaluable. Sharing my experiences openly with others who offered support and understanding helped me to fully overcome the fears that had briefly threatened to overshadow my daily life. This network of friends and family became a foundation of strength and encouragement. In this final reflection, I look back at how the terrifying experience served as a catalyst for significant personal growth and a shift towards prioritizing my safety and mental health. Thank you for following my journey, and remember, it's crucial to make choices that align with your own well-being and peace of mind. As I close this chapter, It's clear that the incident not only reshaped my professional life, but also deepened my understanding of personal boundaries and resilience. Establishing a healthier work-life balance became a priority, reinforcing that my safety should never be compromised for a job. The lessons learned from that frightful night continue to influence my decisions. I've become an advocate for workplace safety, sharing my story to raise awareness and encourage others to speak up about their own experiences and concerns. This experience underscored the importance of listening to one's instincts and taking action to remove oneself from potentially harmful situations. I am now more proactive about ensuring environments are safe and advocating for changes when they are not. Reflecting on these events, I am grateful for the opportunity to grow and help others do the same. Embracing these changes has not only made me stronger, but also more connected to those around me, a true silver lining to an otherwise daunting experience. Pulling up to the address, the building appeared as a lone structure amidst the backdrop of dark, towering warehouses. The house itself seemed ordinary, a small beacon of normalcy in a neighborhood that felt forgotten by time. Yet, the silence of the industrial district amplified every sound. The gravel crunching under the tires, the soft hum of the car engine, and my own uneven breaths. As I killed the engine, a figure caught my eye. A man, tall and still, stood at the end of the driveway. He was dressed in a gray jacket and jeans, his face oddly illuminated by the dim glow of the streetlight. His smile was wide, too wide, stretching in a way that didn't reach his eyes, which remained fixed on me as I exited the car. The stillness of the scene was unnerving. Here was this man, standing motionless except for that unsettling smile. As I approached with the pizza, the air felt charged, a static of tension that made each step heavier than the last. Join me as this seemingly straightforward delivery unfolds into an encounter that is anything but ordinary, where every moment feels drawn out and laden with an intensity that is hard to shake. With the pizza in hand, I walked closer, keeping my eyes on the man. He didn't move, didn't speak, and his smile stayed exactly the same. It wasn't friendly, it was unsettling, like he was enjoying some joke that only he understood. My instincts told me to turn around and leave, but I forced myself to continue. I had a job to finish. "Here's your order," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't respond. He just kept staring, that unnatural smile still frozen on his face. It felt like I was being watched not just by his eyes, but by the silence itself. Everything about the situation felt wrong, yet I stood there, waiting for him to take the pizza. What happened next only made things stranger. Stay with me as this interaction takes a chilling turn, where even the smallest actions become part of something far more sinister. Finally, the man reached into his pocket, pulling out coins one by one. Slowly, he counted them, holding each one up to the light before placing it in his other hand. It was a painfully long process, deliberate in a way that felt more like a performance than a simple transaction. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing second, broken only by the faint clink of metal as he sorted the change. When he handed me the exact amount, his fingers brushed against mine. His skin was icy, far colder than it should have been on a night like this. I tried to pull back quickly, but he held the moment just a second longer than necessary. Then, as I handed him the pizza, he finally spoke, his voice calm and deliberate. "You drive fast, don't you?" The comment hit me like a shock. There was no way he could know anything about my driving habits. I hadn't seen him before, and he had no reason to know who I was. The question hung in the air, turning an already tense situation into something much more sinister. Stay tuned as I make my next move, caught between fear and the urgent need to leave this unnerving encounter behind. I forced a nervous smile and muttered, "Oh, thanks," stepping back quickly as I handed over the pizza. My heart was racing now, every instinct screaming at me to get back to my car. The man's smile widened just slightly, as though he could sense my discomfort, and his unblinking stare never left me. As I turned and began walking away, I felt his eyes follow me, the weight of his gaze pressing down on my back. Each step felt slower than the last, and the space between me and my car seemed to stretch endlessly. I didn't dare look over my shoulder, I couldn't. The thought of catching him still standing there, watching, was too much to bear. I finally reached my car, got in, and locked the doors in one swift motion. My hands trembled as I started the engine, and I wasted no time pulling out of the driveway. But even as I sped away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was far from over. Stay with me as this haunting experience escalates, turning an unsettling moment into something far more terrifying. As I drove away, the tension didn't leave me. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I saw him still standing at the end of the driveway, holding the pizza box and staring in my direction. His smile hadn't faded. It was as if he was waiting, watching, even as I sped down the street. I turned a corner, hoping that putting some distance between us would ease my nerves. But a few minutes later, something caught my eye in the mirror. Far behind, just visible under the faint glow of a distant streetlight, was a figure. My heart sank. It looked like him, the same man, walking slowly but somehow always staying in sight. I pressed the gas pedal harder, the unease growing into full-blown panic. There was no way he could be following me not on foot. But no matter how fast I drove, the feeling of being watched lingered, as if his presence was burned into the back of my mind. What happened next sealed the night as one I would never forget. Stay with me as this story takes an even darker turn, pushing the limits of fear and reason. I finally reached the pizza shop, hoping the familiar setting would calm my nerves. The lights inside were off, everyone had already gone home. I parked in the empty lot, letting the car idle as I tried to convince myself that I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe the stress of the night had gotten to me, and my mind was playing tricks. Then my phone buzzed. I jumped, the sudden vibration startling me in the quiet car. When I picked it up, I saw a text from an unknown number. It read, "Drive safe." My stomach dropped. My hands gripped the phone tightly as I looked around the lot, my eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. And there he was, at the far edge of the parking lot, barely illuminated by the weak glow of a streetlight, stood the man. His figure was still, his head slightly tilted, and that same unsettling smile was plastered across his face. I froze, unable to look away, my mind racing with questions and fear. Without thinking, I threw the car into reverse and sped out of the lot, not daring to glance back again. I had no idea how he got there or what he wanted, but I knew one thing for certain: I was never coming back. Stay tuned as I recount how I made the decision to leave this job behind and the lasting impact this terrifying encounter left on me. The drive home felt endless, even though I took every shortcut I knew. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles white as I kept glancing in the mirrors, half expecting to see him again. Every shadow on the roadside seemed to shift. Every flicker of light felt like movement. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. When I finally reached home, I locked the doors and windows, double-checking each one. The fear didn't leave me even in the safety of my own space. I turned off all the lights, sat in the dark, and tried to steady my breathing. But the text, the smile, the way he seemed to appear out of nowhere all of it replayed in my mind like a terrible loop. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't just a bad delivery experience. Something about this man wasn't normal. I couldn't go back to work. Not after this. The thought of being out there again, vulnerable, was too much. Stay with me as I share how I moved forward from that night and the changes I made to ensure I would never find myself in such a terrifying situation again. The next morning, I called my manager and told them everything. I left out no detail: the man, the text, how he appeared at the pizza shop. I expected disbelief, maybe even ridicule, but to my surprise, my manager took it seriously. "Take some time off," they said, but I knew I wasn't coming back. That job was over for me. I spent the next few days trying to shake off the fear that clung to me. I changed my phone number, installed extra locks on my doors, and even considered moving. Every small sound at night made me jump. The idea of going back to that shop or driving deliveries again felt impossible. But through it all, I realized something important. Trusting your instincts is not a weakness. That night, I could have ignored the warning signs, stayed longer, or brushed off my fear. Instead, I chose to listen to the unease, and it may have saved me from something far worse. In the days that followed, I began piecing my life back together, determined to leave the shadows of that night behind. Stay with me as I reflect on how this experience taught me the value of vigilance and the strength to rebuild after fear. As the days turned into weeks, I focused on reclaiming a sense of normalcy. I found a new job with daytime hours, far removed from late-night deliveries and the isolation of empty streets. The change gave me a sense of control, a way to feel grounded after the chaos of that night. I also took steps to ensure my safety moving forward. I signed up for self-defense classes and started learning how to handle unsettling situations more confidently. Sharing my story with friends and family helped ease the burden, their support reminding me I wasn't alone. This experience taught me to be more cautious, but it also gave me a deeper appreciation for the importance of trusting your instincts and prioritizing your safety. Moving forward, I knew I would never ignore that gut feeling again. Stay with me as I reflect on how this incident reshaped my perspective on personal security and how I turned a terrifying encounter into an opportunity to grow stronger and wiser.